I'm happy to talk more about it. And I'm happy to have a co-chair. I'm happy to have help. So we can talk about that some more too. Cool. We are streaming. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for watching. If you're on the stream here, I'll say hi in the stream. Hi friends. So let's get into things. Do we have any announcements? I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is that Node v10 went out, right?
No, Node v10 did not go out.
20, sorry.
You're good.
My brain.
It did go out about 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that sounds like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other announcements besides my incorrect one? I can't think of anything. If not, are there any board updates?
Well, we don't have board members around, so.
Abby, you're on the board, right?
Yes.
Oh, apologies. Yes, I meant we don't have any CPC board members around. I forget that we have like regular ones, and I don't know like how much they're allowed to tell us things anyway. So.
Yeah.
I don't have an update, so let me.
Okay. Yeah.
I can think about it. Maybe I'll weigh in later.
Okay, no problem. And a lot of times, you know, there's no updates, so that's fine. Hey, Christian, thanks for joining. Cool. And I will drop the doc in the chat one more time for Christian. Please add yourself, and hoping taking notes is always great. So if we get into the agenda, the first one here is to simplify the board, CPC board representation. Toby, this is a pull request that you opened. I know there's been some chatter and stuff here. Do you want to give us an update?
Sure. So we talked last time about opening a third seat because there was a third seat planned in the bylaws. Originally for what became GSlandia, and it turns out that it's complicated to actually have a board seat for a whole community like this, for like quorum issues and a whole bunch of other related legal requirements around like board seats. And so the idea was to turn that into a regular CPC seat, and then the other part of this was that there are 2 existing board seats and was different names for like no good reason. And so essentially, and then the third thing is that we were discussing about having board seats per project, much like silver members have a number of seats per, every new 10 silver member, there's a new seat that opens. And so the idea was to do something similar with the CPC board seats. And so essentially that's what the proposal is, right? So the proposal essentially is simplify everything so that we have just like CPC directors. There is 1 CPC director per 10 projects. And that's that.
Okay, interesting. And we have over 40 projects, so will we be bumping that up to 4 CPC board seats?
No, we actually don't have 40 projects. We have, I think, 34 or 33, and like 6 that are in onboarding phase. So they would come to, I think, 39 or 40 at some point, but not right now. So yes, it does look like that implies some, you know, an additional seat down the line, I think, if the math is correct.
Okay, interesting. That sounds great.
Feedback from the folks, and Matteo in particular, who's on the board, was it would be great to get consensus on this before the board meeting that's face-to-face. That's upcoming as part of OpenJS World. And so maybe if folks do have want to ask more questions, or do have disagreements or concerns or whatnot, it would be good to actually spend a few minutes on this now.
What are the consensus options? Like what are our options in front of us? I'm sorry if you just said those.
No, it didn't. I mean, agree that this is a good idea, or essentially suggest. Well, I guess we can agree that this is a good idea. We can disagree that this is a good idea, or we can agree that this is a good idea, but like want a slightly different sort of like implementation of the idea. And
We have-
so
Do we have the idea down in writing?
I think that
Well-
the gist of it is just the one board seat per 10 projects, as
Okay.
opposed to the board seats that we have now for the CPC and.
So I would say that the gist of the idea is have all CPC board seats be equal, like don't
Mhm.
make weird distinctions
Yep.
between the different ones.
Yeah.
And then have a direct relationship between the number of projects and the number of board seats, just like the silver members have. And so I think implementation details would be things like, what do we call those? Do we call those CPC directors or something else? I don't really care.
Yeah, I don't care.
And like how many projects do we use as a threshold?
So
I picked 10 to match silver members, but people
Yeah.
could disagree and want a different number.
I mean, so is the board okay with us all of this, or like, is it going to be okay that in a not too distant future we will surpass 3 and go to 4?
Well, that is a good question, but I think that is a question that the current CPC board members should negotiate with the rest of the board. And we need to have agreement that that is what we want as the CPC. And that it is a reasonable ask. Both of these things, I think.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable ask. I think just fiddling the numbers is going to be the annoying part that we talk a lot about. With not that talking a lot about it's bad. It's just it's going to be like, what is the correct number? I have a feeling that what I'm about to say is something I'll regret in 4 years, but I'd say maybe 15, because then we keep 2 right now, and then that pushes out having a third for a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I was thinking too.
But 10 is also like the optical thing that I want to avoid there is that but projects aren't really equivalent to, yeah, I don't know. I don't want it to be like projects are less than silver. I don't know. I don't think many people will care about it or look at it in that way, but
I mean, I did the math. I tried like multiple different options and
Yeah.
looked at different ways of doing this. And at one point, I mean, the idea was for a while. I mean, the plan was that we'd have a third seat when GS Landia was landed, right? And that was like 2 years ago at this point, right?
I mean, that the original idea was that we had that in like, a year after the foundation started.
Right. But I mean, so the point is like going to 3 seats right away doesn't seem like a weird idea, right?
Yeah.
And then, going to a 4th seat in the future, a year or so, didn't feel like absurd either, given that
Makes
afterwards
sense.
it's going to take quite a time. I'll give it to you, Michael, in like a second, right? I mean, it just like said, 10 just felt like this is the same as silver members, and that makes it an easy conversation. That was the idea, Michael.
Yeah, the context was, and what's in there, not when JavaScript Landia landed, but when it reached 2,000 members. So there was not just that the program
Good
was in
point.
place, but like it was a fairly high threshold of there were enough members that warranted representation versus, there's 10 members, right? So that's just slightly different context.
It's a fair point. Thanks for bringing it up.
And then I think the question became like, how do you get consensus from 2,000 members if you're representing them or something? There was something in the bylaws that made.
I mean, yeah, that's a weird one of like that you're selecting someone to represent them and then that person is independently making choices. I think that's pretty normal for. Toby, tell me if I'm way off, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty normal for a board and like a board member.
No, the problem is, my understanding is the problem for electing a board member requires, from a legal perspective, that you have quorum. And getting
okay.
yeah, so suddenly you have to make sure that you have like 1,000 people that vote. If not, you can't elect the person.
Mhm.
And so the feedback that the foundation has received from other foundations that have tried that is, don't do it. It's a very bad idea. It doesn't work. It's super painful to organize.
That makes
And
sense.
so I think that was that.
So I guess just doing the math on what you said earlier, right? You said we have 33 projects right now. Is that correct? 32, 33?
I have to count them again.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying. Don't worry about it. It's like slightly like low 30s, right?
I think we're low 30s and would reach
I
high
think we would
30s
reach-
to low 40s
Yeah.
once everyone joins. That's
Yeah,
planned
so-
to.
It's like somewhat near horizon, right? I don't know if that's even a year out, right? It's like maybe
Fair.
8
Yep.
months.
Totally.
Which like that's fine. Do we have a fourth person who will be a board member? Like, I'll go be a board member. I don't think anyone wants me to be a board member, but I'll go do it. But like, I don't know. I get worried about having too many too fast. But yeah, I don't know.
So
I'm just worried
yeah,
about that specifically.
I hear you, Tierney. I kind of share your point. We did have 3 people run for the last role, just as a point of
Mhm.
reference. But just to kind of frame this conversation a little bit, so I think the things we're thinking about is like what number of projects, if we're going to go down this route, how many projects do we do? Do we do 10, 12, 15? And then also I think additionally, is there a cap? Like, do we get up to 5 board members? Do we get up to 6? CNCF has how many projects? So do we put a cap on it too?
How many? Well, okay. I will very firmly predict that we never hit the number of projects that the CNCF has.
Yes, I
CNCF
agree.
is basically NPM for Cloud Native. But how many members are currently in, or how many corporate members, like in total, what is the board makeup right now of like in total? Oh, I'm sorry, Toby, I didn't see your hand raised. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. This tiny thing that I wanted to say is, well, 2 things. One is the bylaws. It's not when we reach 40. It's the election cycle after when we reach 40, right? So it's at least a year off from now.
Okay.
Right. And then the second thing that I wanted to say was, there is no cap for silver members, but we can also tune stuff down the road. Like, I don't think we need to suddenly decide today that the bylaws need to be this absolutely, frozen thing from this day onwards. Like, it's changeable. I mean, the problem, like, what you want to avoid is creating like a weird imbalance that like completely shifts thing on next day, and then like you can't recoup from it. Like, this is not going to be the case. Like, like by the time we absorb like 20 or 30 more projects and suddenly would have 7 seats, like I'd imagine like a whole bunch of other things would need to be fixed and changed.
So can I just respond to that real quick, Michael?
Sure.
I think I'm fine with Toby's proposal as long as we have the option to not elect someone. Because if we have 3 and we could do 4, if we have 3 and we could do 4, and we choose not to, I'm fine with that. I'm super fine with that. That's all. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I'm not I don't want to put words into any members or anything, but I do think one thing to consider is like our existing board members, so people who are at platinum or gold or whatever, like at what point does it dilute the value of them joining and becoming board members? Like, does this have any impact on that? If there's 10 members from the community, effectively the community could make all the decisions without even consulting the platinums or the golds or whatever. And we could decide if that's okay or not, but I think that's something as that's part of the mix in some, at least if I was paying the money, I might think that.
Toby first.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely agree, right? And this is precisely why they actually, this is a bylaws change, right? And so the existing board is going to make that decision. Like the only thing that the CPC can do is actually suggest something, right? And so, I mean, that makes complete sense. And I think it's a really good point for the board members to think about themselves, right? Like, will this dilute like their willingness to continue or their ability to continue making an internal, the case internally for continuing to spend money on the foundation? So, and I think that's a really good argument. And, like I would be the first to say, well, if like everyone says, well, we're no longer going to be able to pay dues if like a board loses some kind of value, then of course it doesn't make sense to continue doing this, right?
Yeah, and so and I think back even to, Tierney's point a little bit of like, we'd struggle to have beyond a certain number. So like we might even want to say it's X per project up to a cap of 3 or 4 or whatever, pick a number. That would be an option.
Tierney?
Yeah, I'm looking. I think there's 7 project members right now, but also like one thing to consider, right? Microsoft has a community rep indirectly through Sarah. I think Michael, you're one of the CPC reps, right? Sorry, I've not followed the election stuff there. Are you still one of the rep?
No, it's Sarah and
No.
Mateo.
It's Sarah and who?
Mateo.
Mateo. Okay, cool. Well, then I mean that still kind of addresses the point of Platformatic. His company is a member. Like it is very likely. I think I might be the only person who me and Yagiz, and I guess Toby, are the only people. Yeah, Toby, you're in the middle. Are the only people who I could imagine running, and maybe other people are interested. I'm not trying to like exclude people. I'm just saying like of the people who I know might have some kind of interest, who are not representative. Like most of this body is usually going to be people who are already at platinum or gold or silver. Like they're going to be involved in the foundation at the corporate level. I am like honestly more worried about corporate over-representation through the community rather than like diluting the pool of, well, I guess it kind of ends up being the same thing though, because if like, three people from, I don't know, I'm going to choose one that doesn't have someone in this Joyant show up as community reps, right? And then they have a 4th one. They only need 1 vote to make anything happen. If there's 3 community seats, that would be true, right? And so like I get worried about that. I don't know if there's existing rules around corporate representation and like that precluding certain people. If there's not, we need to make those. I think that's extremely important. I do not want this to be run by like a single company, even if it is community.
There's already rules about for some members, but the community ones are excluded so that the community's members can actually represent the community, right? Like otherwise, we would have been in a position where the community members couldn't vote. So that there are like silver members, the silver representative, and I think the at-large, like there are already rules that say like if they represent the same one as one of the main, like the platinums, they don't get a vote. But community members have been specifically excluded to make sure that the community had representation.
I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Abby.
I was just gonna say with like with Shane with Microsoft, he gets a vote, but then I don't. But then Sarah still gets a vote with LinkedIn, because she's representing the community and not the companies. So that there are some rules like that.
Yeah, I guess from our end, if we're changing this to be an unlimited or bigger pool, I want to make sure that we're not injecting more like of a single company that is at platinum, or well, I mean platinum is the obvious one that will have like overwhelming stuff. So like, limiting it to 1 additional vote from a CBC rep at the same company as someone who's doing that. So like in that case, I think that would allow for everyone who's currently voted. That wouldn't fundamentally change what we're doing now. It just wouldn't allow additional votes. Yeah, I think that's something I would want to do if we're making this change.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think we should time box this though, so maybe we can try to take some of that stuff to the PR.
I see the doubt in Toby's eyes. I want to ask him real quick if there's anything, is that completely off base?
No, I think it's a very valid concern. I don't think it's a very valid concern right now. And I just dread going back into the bylaws and like trying to figure out like what to edit and where to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's why I'm making those faces.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of like therapy. Like you want to start it when you don't need it rather than when you do. Because it's way harder to start it when you do. It's way harder to get this written down once it's already implemented. Yeah. And so I want to make sure to voice that early. If we're making this change, that's either unlimited or maybe I'd say 5 or more is where I'd request this. If it's less, if it's 4 or less, it's fine. We don't need to.
yeah, but it still makes my
I'm
work
so-
annoying.
I'm sorry, Toby. That ain't core work for you. We can time box this, Joe. I apologize for the.
No, it's
sidebar.
fine. I think it's a good discussion, and I think it's something that probably requires some more thought too, as to how that would play out or how we would implement something like that. So, so let's think about it and continue the conversation in the PR and go from there.
I know that you want to time box this, and you're right, and I agree. I would have wanted to figure out if what would be necessary to move to consensus from this group, so that we can actually try to move forward with this now. That the timing is right to do so, because this is clearly a conversation that is going to be much easier if it happens face to face than if it doesn't.
Here's what I'm thinking about. Oh, sorry. What I'm thinking about at the moment is maybe we should work on this more at the working session next week.
I can't make it.
No,
I think does anyone dissent from doing this as an idea? Is anyone -1 on that? Also, do we have consensus or do we have enough people that even ask that from the CPC? I don't think we do.
It doesn't have to be formal. And I mean,
Okay.
the question is like, are people excited and interested to move forward with this and sort of like speed it up to make that kind of like timeline, or not? And that's also fine. I'm not going to spend any time on this if people don't care. That's the only thing. Which is, it's totally fine if people don't care or don't feel like now is the right time, or feel like the ask is too big, or whatever the reason is. That's totally cool. I'm not really attached to it that much. It's just, we talked about it. I did it. There's a timeline. Either we can or we can't.
Is anyone opposed to what Toby just said? No. Okay, cool. Go ahead, Toby. I think the approach here is we got general +1s here. I can't imagine people -1ing this, like hard blocking it. I think getting the PR up for us to review is probably the step here.
Oh, there is a PR. It's ready.
Oh.
You just have to look at it. There was a diff for the bylaws. There's all the things.
Okay. Cool. I will review that today.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you haven't seen this, I'm sorry, we should have talked about this at the beginning to clarify that this was ready. If you haven't seen this, please go have a look.
Yeah, I think the real ask is like, is it close enough to take to the board to say, what do you think? Like, there's no point, I think, in my mind, in refining it much further before taking it to the board to say, like, is the board even open to this, right? Like, the only one thing that comes to mind is like the unbounded aspect, but otherwise it'd be good to get feedback that says it's possible or it's no, right?
Yep. I agree.
Do you agree with that, Toby? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, just to be clear, suggesting bylaws changes formally to the board is the work of an attorney, right? What I did is make a suggestion of what this could look like. So, we need to have agreement from the CPC that something like this is what we want. And then the board has to look at it and say, yeah, something like this is okay. And then it has to go to a lawyer. The lawyer has to like make the bylaws changes. The board has to get those bylaws changes approved. And then it goes back to the CPC for implementation in terms of what that means to the CPC, right? So like, yes, to your point, like if we have, agreement that this is something that we think we want, and the ask looks reasonable, then we should bring it to the board and see what happens there. Essentially, because we can't merge the CPC, the pull request,
Yeah.
until we have the bylaw changes, right? Because like that wouldn't work.
So, we essentially have consensus in this meeting and we need to take it to the board, right? And this PR that we have, everybody should look at to get an idea of what we're talking about, but we're not looking to necessarily merge it. We need to go through the whole
No.
process.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Cool.
Cool.
So comments on the PR then in that case.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, and
And
the
I'll
number
try
of
to
stuff.
figure out if I can
Comment.
address your question.
Yeah.
Your concern, Tierney.
Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize for making it harder for you.
Thank you for the apology. I don't know if it's accepted yet. I'll see.
I hope it is. We
Cool.
can move
All
on,
right.
Joe.
Moving on. The next item is open up community board seat. Obviously, I think that's very much related to the conversation we just had and the PR that's open, so we can kind of move along, correct? The next item after that is, should we have a co-chair? Which I think is, I would imagine most folks are open to that. Feel free to say no if that's the case. We should talk more about that, I guess. Toby,
I would love to have your thoughts about it at some point, Joe.
Yeah,
Because this is not something I want to impose on you. It's something that I think for continuity makes sense.
yep.
But I want your thoughts about it.
I would love help, so that would be great. I mean, not that this particular part of it is that hard, but I try to keep on top of everything that's going on in the CPC, and so having another set of eyes on things would be great. So
Cool.
I will comment on that issue. I don't think I have yet. So I will put a comment in here. Joe, I would love help. Cool. So the next one is the CPC elections and CPC director. This has been all like announced and everything, right? Is anybody unaware of this? I was reelected and Sarah Chips was reelected. Cool. All right, I'm going to close this puppy then. With a big old yay. Great. So moving on. Specify how and where to identify individuals from a project to join the CPC. Ben opened this. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments here? Part of the onboarding checklist requires that a project identify individuals from the project to join the CPC. How and where should this be done?
This, I think Ben should be in touch. I mean, this feels like a staff operations kind of question.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So maybe we come back to this, or Ben, maybe you can help me get that sorted. Satisfy that.
But maybe the point is that it's not super clear in the docs.
Yeah.
Like how that interaction is supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's Ben, maybe you and I can talk about this and just see what's going on there. We've done this a bunch in the past, but I don't know how well it's documented or anything, so we'll just have to take a look. Cool. Enabling payments for GitHub code space for projects. Sean's not on the call. There was an update here 2 weeks ago. I assume There's nothing new here. Next action is to track the monthly usage for org, leveraging the monitor usage and report back to see about the budget.
We can probably close that. Like I get bills, so I'm monitoring. So if anything is out of whack for a month or something, or if it looks like we're trending up, I can open up a new GitHub issue just to keep folks aware. But it's usage right now is fine.
All right, closed. I put a comment that you would monitor, Ben. And Ben will monitor. Closing issue. Okay, cool. Create some documentation webpage to describe collaboration model of the OpenJS projects. I know we've talked about this a bunch. I think just somebody needs to kind of start to flesh it out. I think even like maybe somebody was going to give a talk on something like this too, and I can't recall, but I don't know if there's really anything to do on this right now. Might even be something we can take the label off of and let's see how things progress. No update. Next item is update contributor covenant code of conduct to V2.1. I think this can kind of be closed once we sort of get those other PRs fully landed. I think if I remember correctly, this is the one that has maybe a checklist. No, maybe I'm wrong. It's a different one. Unless it's so nested in here.
So updating to 2.1 is quite easy right now. The only thing is to revert a couple of changes in the patch file, and then we can automatically update it.
Yeah, okay.
But this pull request needs to be closed, and a new pull request needs to be opened with only updating the patching file,
Okay.
and that will be it.
I think that's, I'm maybe thinking of the one after this one, which we'll get to in a second. So if I move on, license check support tooling. Looking at the last comment from Jordan. So this can be implemented now with a repo report. Yeah, I'm not sure what the next steps are on this. So, yeah, I don't know how we want to move forward with this. I have a comment last month about two pathways forward if we want to integrate this sort of tooling. But I guess decisions need to be made and actions need to be taken. Not sure what there is to talk about it. So if I keep moving on, the last one for our CPC agenda is the clarify requirements around COC violation. This is the one I was thinking of that has some checklist here that in Toby's comment, and I think the plan is to just go back to that checklist once we get the patching work done and that update to 2.1. And then we can look through this and see if there's anything that remains and go from there. And then the last item on the agenda is the workshop, the Secure the Web Forward workshop call for papers. This is the standards repo issue 213. I think the ask is if anybody has you know, a topic that they would like to bring to this summit of sorts, the call for participants is open. So raising awareness there. Cool. That's the end of the agenda. Anything else anybody want to work on? No? If not, I smell my pizza burning in the toaster oven, and I should let y'all go. Thanks everybody for joining and working through the stuff. Appreciate it.
See you
Take care,
later.
folks.
Bye.